Assalamualaikum fam! Hope you're doing well. So, I finished this book quite some time ago. It has a bunch of random facts about ancient Rome. And Anthony Everett with Roddy Ashworth have written great books. I have several of his books. He is an expert on ancient Rome. And as an Italian / American Cherokee Muslim, right? A mixed race individual. I still enjoy learning about the history of my peoples. And how that, history is great to study. So, it's just amazing. So this section was called the Greasy Pole, and what's cool about it is it talks different points about election positions and stuff like that. So let's get into it. Here we go. The modern eye, the oddest feature of the Roman way of doing politics, was a general spirit of interfusion. Okay, so spirit of interfusion, Roman way. Senior consul, senior statesmen doubled up as priests. Now this is unique because some people forget that there were religious points in the Roman Empire. But here again you see that a statesman doubled up as a priest. So they fused religion and state, right? So it wasn't as separate as the atheists contend. And as army generals. Now, how cool is that? You have military, spiritual, and statesmen 3 in 1, right? You were not just some pencil-pushing lobbyist for a pharmaceutical company. You actually had to have some skin in the game. A consul might be Rome's high priest, and Rome's high priest is called Pontifex Maximus. I love Latin. It just sounds amazing. As well as joint commander-in-chief. Under the emperor's officials continued to be elected, but over time, their powers dwindled. Elections came to be replaced by imperial nomination. So here, you see how with the republican system, they had the, representative form, right? You had to kind of orate in the forum. But now you see how the imperial dictatorian position started going like, you get to rise. So you see a sort of hybrid coming about. The exclusive authority of the consuls was appropriated by the emperors. Okay, so what do you get here? Before, the consuls, they had the ability to, help someone in the election, help nominate and all that stuff. But now you see the emperors starting to be like, you know what, we're going to do imperial nomination instead. So little by little, this structure is changing. Overleaf will be found a list of elected officials of the Roman Republic. In the 1st century BC, according to Cursus Honorum, or honors race. So that's cool, they called it an honors race. Kind of mentioning honor. The Roman way of politics. In practice, the minimum age rules were often bent or broken. So that's interesting. So today you have dinosaurs in political office. Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer. These people are ancient and they're preventing new blood from getting into politics that's more in touch with the people. It'd be different if they were like the scholars, right? If they were scholars who were advisors, where they have like their sage elders, full of wisdom, they get smarter as they age. Whereas people like Joe Biden, they become mentally deteriorated over time, right? Because Alzheimer's, you name it, just they got all these mental problems that, prevent them from doing their job. It's interesting because they wanted to have people get in. So it's like, oh, you have to be this old. Mind you, they didn't want to have like a 12-year-old, but it seems that they wanted the young men to progress, right? Okay, come on. We want our men to be, leaders. We want them to, excel. It's really interesting how they're pushing them to become politicians, have families. Today, you see the opposite. So it's really cool to look at history in that way. Oh, it's amazing. So now he has here, like, some points of how old each one was. So a consul, that's 2 heads of government and state. They're also commanders-in-chief, and the minimum age is 42. So look at that. So the minimum age is 42, and they're like, hey, we got to bend that because it's pretty old. right? It's pretty old. And if you think about it, people died, I mean, back then didn't have antibiotics and stuff, but, you gotta wonder. A praetor, you get 8 of them. They're law officers, and they're also commanders of armies. Their minimum age was 39. The Aediles, there's 4 of them. They were responsible for public administration in Rome. Festival organizers, and their minimum age was 36. So festival organizers, so for their religion, remember how it said that some of them served as priests and stuff? They're talking about those types of religious rituals. The New Year, Janus, and all their weird stuff. Quaestors, 20 of them, they were finance officers, and their minimum age was 30 years. So 30 years is a pretty decent age. Definitely a good age for that one. How you handle money, what you gotta do. Tribunes of the people, 10 of them, defenders of the common people. Their persons were sacrosanct. They could propose legislation. So that's really cool because the tribunes sound more of like the voice representatives of the plebs, right? So, you definitely want them not to be too old. Censors, 2 of them. Formal consuls. Okay, remember consuls? So censors were former consuls, and who were consuls? They were heads of government of state. They were elected for 5 years. They maintain a census of citizens. So here, you can see a census even back then, which is pretty cool. Reviewed membership of the Senate and purged senators for misbehavior. So the censors are like, hey, you got a wild and out, senator. He's doing a little bit of weird stuff. Not following how you're supposed to speak. Well, guess what? You're outie. Also responsible for public works. So notice that. That's cool. So you have, the tribunes of the people. They're defenders of the common people. Then you have these censors who are actually responsible for public works. Sounds like a lot like infrastructure, right? So, hey, this bridge is broken. This, cobblestone street. Every time a wagon goes through it, it busts a wheel. We gotta fix that up. Really kind of highlights much about what's going on in terms of delegation of authority and who's supposed to do what. Dictator replaced the consuls in the state of emergency for a maximum of 6 months in theory, and held full powers. Could not be vetoed, nominated by the consuls. So that is cool. So look at the relationship between the consuls, or the heads of government, minimum age 42 years old. The consuls are going to nominate the dictator, who's going to have emergency powers or maximum control, who cannot be vetoed. Now remember, the veto was very important in the Roman Republic. I veto your motion, veto the motion. Like, you have that a lot. But here, dictator is like, obviously, what we think it is, right? It's just like, hey, remember, part of the drama between Caesar was them worrying about him becoming a permanent dictator. And the people, it is said, wanted him to be such, right? Proconsul or Propraetor. Governor of a Roman province or army commander, former consul or praetor. So that's awesome. So remember, a praetor was a law officer. So a proconsul or a propraetor was usually, as they said, a former law officer who commanded armies. Minimum age 39. So notice this. They commanded armies and later were able to qualify to govern a Roman province. So you see the military being a key factor in responsibility, right? You led men into war. Okay, now you can lead the people in their civic affairs. It's really amazing. It's so interesting how the military prowess was very, very important. Instead of just someone being only in a college like today, you can start college, 19 years old, get a PhD all the way to your age. You have, you're more frail and city. You're cerebral. You're not, skilled in other ways with like raw human power, danger, things like that. But you can get in a position of authority. And then we wonder why things are kind of more odd now. But it just shows you how different empires structured themselves, right? The politics of that empire, how long it lasted was pretty long. And then how it slowly became corrupt. But I just thought, man, that's amazing. So censors were former consuls. Consuls were head of government. And then consuls also nominated the dictator. So as you can see, even the proconsuls and propraetors were former consuls. So if you notice, getting into the position of a consul, you got a lot of doors open for you. You could go here, you could go there. You know, you got a lot of things going on to the point where, like, hey, get in to be a consul and the doors will open up for you. So remember, Rome's high priest was the Pontifex Maximus. They did the spirit of infusion. It was a way of doing politics. The Roman way is essentially to have the statesmen double up. They are not just a politician, but they are military and a religious figure as well. So don't let some people think that the atheist way of being in a Berkeley classroom is, you know, and just talking in theory in your ivory towers is the only way to be qualified to earn a place in politics. Quite the opposite. And the founders also studied these models. Okay? If you notice, the architecture is also built in the Roman way. Rome has had a huge span of influence on the world. So studying this shows you, like, you know, how do we do this? So it's totally nerdy. This is the Cursus Honorum. So hopefully you learned something. Make me dictator, though. I don't want to be a consul or praetor or Aedile or Quaestor. Make me dictator. You know you want to.